This is going to be a fun conversation because you found yourself in a place that many people do, and it's I have a job. I'm employed. It's fine. It pays the bills. I have health insurance. I probably have a 401k. I could do this forever until I retire, but man, I feel like there's more. Does that adequately describe where you were during your banking career?
Somewhat, yes. I was doing really well in banking, and that was a very good choice. Cooking for me really started before I embarked on my international banking career, as I learned the ropes of the kitchen with my maternal grandmother in a very small town in Guatemala City. And I ended up living with her because my parents got divorced when I was very young. So, forward to the US. Banking was a good movement for me because it really formed me, formed my business core, and that has been very important in what I do today.
So, how old were you when you moved from Guatemala to the United States?
I was 19 years old. So I had lived most of my young life and teen years in Guatemala. So enough time to absorb the culture and enough time to absorb so much of the essence that makes who I am today in the culinary field.
So while you were doing your banking career and were successful at that, how would you describe your cooking? Was it a hobby? Was it something you spent all day Sunday doing so you could eat good food all week? Did you have to sort of set it like literally on the back burner because you didn't have time? How did you integrate your passion for food into your life when you were in banking?
My mother and my grandmother influenced me so much and inspired me to eat healthy that I cooked all the time when I was in banking. On the weekends, I prepared meals to last for the entire week so that I would heat them up in the evening and just make a quick salad to accompany that meal. So I have always cooked, even in my years in banking, and I say I cooked up a storm because that has always been my passion. And I always found a way to fuel that passion, either entertaining all the time, cooking at home all the time. And back in those days when I was in international banking, and this is in Kansas City, Missouri, um, we had potlucks as celebrations for birthdays and so on. So all of us used to bring food to work, and that was another opportunity for me to showcase my culture and my cuisine.
And I'm sure everyone else was like, "Ugh, we're gonna do a contest. I'm losing because Amalia's here, and she's gonna beat me because her cooking is amazing." So, I imagine that in Kansas City, perhaps there isn't. Maybe there is a lot of Guatemalan. Like, were you exposing people to something completely new for their cuisine at a potluck?
Yes, so back then I was probably one of the few Latins that worked in that bank and in that department. And the demographic here in the States, in terms of Latin Americans, um, has been predominantly Mexican. So people are familiar with somewhat Mexican cuisine, but back then, Guatemalan cuisine was even not heard of. So that was something new and unique. So yes, it gave me the opportunity not only to tell them about my culture, but to say, hey, look, here's a wonderful cuisine that you need to try.
So you continued with this hobby of, passion cooking on the side and then the international banking career. When did you make the move to say, or what prompted you to say, you know what, this passion of mine over here is going to become the focus of my career?
I had such a good international banking career that I thought that I was going to do that forever because I was doing so well. I started in operations and then I transitioned to trade finance. And from there, I helped a local bank start an international department. And then I went to a total of 5 banks as a result of mergers and acquisitions. And then I just said, this is what I want to do. But then something changed along the way. I had a son. And when we become mothers, our priorities start changing and our vision of things start changing. And I had been in banking for almost 20 years by then. And I started thinking, this has been a good journey, but I think I want to do something different. But while I try to reinvent my career and think about what I want to do next, I want to take care of my son, who was 2.5 years old at that time. It really broke my heart to leave him at home in the hands of in the care of someone else, because I grew up with very nurturing hands. My grandmother was very nurturing, and my family has been very nurturing, and I just didn't have the heart to leave him at home. I was in sales in the latter parts of my international banking career. And I remember being in a hotel at nighttime. It's like, what am I doing here? My son needs me, and I need my son. So, I had a lot of those feelings along the way about family and how important it is to me and has been to be part of my son's life. Didn't want to miss his first this, his first that. And I figure, by being and working so hard, money is really not that important. I had a very supportive husband. And, the decision was not easy, because after you've been in a career for almost 20 years, I thought about it for a while. And then finally I made the decision. And then after I made the decision, I was even, questioning, did I make the right decision? But it took me about 3 years to really, really sink in and start thinking, okay, I need to move in the direction that I want to move in. I want to do what really, really gives me passion. And what has always given me passion is being in the kitchen and teaching and educating about not only cuisine, but also about our culture, cultural understanding and appreciation, and so on.
You brought up several really good points, which I think number, one is for people listening who may not have children yet or may have made a different choice. There is no one right choice for every family. And so these folks that, I encounter young women who haven't had children yet. And when I have a child, I'm going to X. And the reality is you have no idea what you're going to do until you have that baby. And for some people, it takes their life this way. For some people, it takes their life that way. There's so many different circumstances that I'm always fascinated when people approach the combination of career and parenting as a black or white issue, because there's so much gray and you don't know what kind of kid you're going to get and you don't know kind of your spouse. I mean, there's the parent, there's so many different factors. So, and the other point that I think is really important that you brought up is that you took 3 years to decide. You didn't just one night have a bad night in a hotel and think, man, I miss him, I'm quitting my job, that's it. It was a very strategic, decisive, thoughtful, intentional, strategic. I imagine you had many, many conversations. It wasn't boy, this is hard, I'm done. You figured out your path before you just turned in your notice.
I did. And one of the reasons it took me so long to decide is that the boss that I had, the last bank that I worked for was here in the Twin Cities, was Wells Fargo. And my boss wouldn't let me quit. In the time that I was there, I was doing so well. And he would say, "Are you sure you want to quit? Go home and sleep on it, and we can talk about it tomorrow." That went on for about a week. And after a week, I said, "Listen, I can't. I've made up my mind. My heart is with my son, and my heart is with my family now." And I really made the decision just to go, and that was it. But after that, it was really, did I really make a good decision? I knew I was leaving a lot of security behind, benefits and a salary and this and that. But when your heart tells you to move in a different direction, I listen. I'm a good listener. I am a gut listener, and intuition for me has been a great thing. And I know intuition is part of many women's life and decisions that we make along the way. And you're right, it is very, very a unique journey for each one of us.
And at the time, how old is your son now? Is he in his 20s? Is he in his teens?
My son is 24 years old now.
Okay, so 24 years old. So I mean, this is, he was born in the 90s. So he's born in the 90s. It was a different time and place where the concept of hybrid working, or you don't have to travel to go to all of the meetings that we think about right now. That isn't how it was in the 90s. In the 90s, if there was a meeting, you were in the office, you were at the meeting. There was no Zoom. There was no, let's think about doing this remote. So perhaps people are able to make a more hybrid decision. But I just wanted to point that out if you're a younger person thinking, well, why didn't she just, change her environment working? That wasn't a thing in the 90s.
Well, the internet wasn't a thing. The cell phones wasn't a thing. So I lived in an environment when I was in banking. Everything was manual. I remember doing books by hand, doing when I was in operations, doing general ledgers, for example. For bankers out there know what doing the book and is balancing those books lately, making tickets, for to go through the system, and so everything was pretty manual, and the teller machines, were really not automated. They were not connected, to an intranet or to the internet. All those things came later, but I also remember hearing so many comments about, oh, we don't want to go on the internet because it's not secure. So there was a lot of talk before, the internet really, really took hold. And then, of course, the digital age was not even near near that time. We don't know how lucky we are and how fortunate we are to have all this technology available to us, because in a way it has made our lives easier. It has simplified our lives. And you're right, back then you had to go to a meeting in person. That was what was done, and there was no question about it. But even before the pandemic, in today's environment, prior to the pandemic, we were still going to many meetings in person that we considered that were still important to go to it. And it's not that they're not as important now, but now we have realized that we can save so much time and effort by holding meetings online, and saving on expenses by having to travel. If it's not absolutely necessary that we are there in person, we can always hold conversations online, whether we are here, we are in Timbuktu, or wherever we are in the world. And that is the beauty of technology that allows us to go worldwide today. But back in the 90s, no, we were in sort of an environment that was fairly small. Even being in one state didn't allow us to share our voice as loud as we can do it today.